How's it going, guys? Welcome to the GSMC Chip Shot Football Podcast presented by the GSMC Sports Network. I'm your host, Manny Maradiege, bringing you guys another round of stories around the NFL and in football in general. It's the off-season, but it's still a lot of stuff to get into. On today's show, I want to discuss Dak's newest contract details, in which there seems to be reports that it seems to be developing in a way that it could lead to no contract extension this offseason. Later in the show, I also want to talk about the Commanders' interest in J.J. McCarthy, potentially at that number 2 pick, so stick around for that, as well as going over a deeper look into the Broncos' offseason thus far, because a lot has been said about them and Russell Wilson, but where do they stand right now? What are their next plans of actions? All that stuff coming up on today's episode. Before I jump into the first segment, I want to remind you guys to follow, like, and subscribe to the show on both YouTube channels and all throughout our social medias, as well as reminding you guys, if you have any questions or comments you want to make during the show, to use the tip and donations link at gsmcpodcast.net with any of those. By using the link, I'm able to see your question pop up here to the right of me in the chat box. I'm able to answer those questions on air and just interact with you guys. It makes it more fun for me. I think it's a big help for the show and all the shows across the network. We always send a big thank you to you guys anytime you guys are able to use that link. Once again, it's gsmcpodcast.net. And in saying that, I'll jump into the first segment of the show around the Bears. Not what they do with the number 1 overall pick, because that's all the news that's coming out. All the speculation is surrounding that number 1 pick and how that starts off the draft. I want to talk about their number 9 pick. A lot of people that really aren't too familiar with the draft, they know it's coming, but aren't really engaged with it as much, might not know that the Bears have 2 first-round picks inside the top 10. That in and of itself is huge, right? That's a big deal, and rightly so. Up till now, everything's been focused on the number 1 pick, Caleb Williams, finding that franchise quarterback. It all seems to be wraps right now, right? That Caleb Williams is going to be that guy, going to be picked number 1 overall, but they still have a very valuable number 9 pick that's sitting there, and I think it still holds a lot of value, like I mentioned, because before they made some of the moves to, trade Justin Fields, bring in Keenan Allen, as well as DeAndre Swift, and all those players that they brought in, the number 9 pick held a lot more importance to me, of value, if I were the Bears, because I thought a lot of mock drafts had them selecting another wide receiver, some sort of playmaker just there, because you wanted to have someone there to help Caleb Williams as much as possible. And now you bring in Keenan Allen, pair him up with DJ Moore. Like I mentioned, DeAndre Swift is there now. This offense is really looking very promising with a lot of potential, but it all rests on the shoulders of Caleb Williams, right? So with this number 9 pick, now you can, I think, venture out a little bit more with this pick and start looking maybe on the other side of the ball. Matt Eberflus is a defensive-minded coach. He comes from a defensive background, so it would make sense that now he's kind of given a bit more leeway to look into that side. Maybe we need a pass rusher now. We could go after that, because ever since they lost Khalil Mack, it's not really been there. They have options there. Most mock drafts, and I believe that we won't see a pass rusher really until the 8th or really the 8th pick with the Atlanta Falcons. I don't think the Tennessee Titans will go edge rusher. So if you want to get someone to go after the quarterback, or just someone on the defensive side of the ball, really, most people have offensive players going in the top 7, really. It's all jam-packed with receivers, only 1 offensive tackle, really, quarterbacks, and those sort of players. You don't really see defense be touched on or talked about until you get to the Atlanta Falcons. People have them drafting Dallas Turner, but the Bears are right there, basically at that same spot. They could get him if the Falcons don't want him. Jared Verse is another option. You could go offensive tackle, which, again, doesn't hurt on the offensive side to protect Caleb Williams. You have Olumuyiwa Fashanu from Penn State. Talise Fuaga from Oklahoma State. You have still some good options there. It might be a little bit too early for Fuaga and Fashanu, but those are the best options other than Joe Alt, because a lot of people have the Tennessee Titans drafting him at number 7, so he might be just out of your reach, but you still have some options there, is what I'm trying to say. With this 9 pick, that is very interesting because they asked Ryan Poles about it, and he kind of gave a breakdown of how he's attacking this problem and how he's attacking the situation with the rest of his team. He said at the NFL coaches meeting, we're going to do some cool things. When we get back, kind of break into teams. One team is going to talk about the tackle position is the best to go after, the wide receiver is the best, the defensive end is the best, and use the factual information to kind of spit that out, and we'll have a debate in terms of what's more impactful for our football team. They also asked Matt Eberflus about it, and he was a bit more, sarcastic about it, a bit more funny about it when he said with the number 9 pick, they're going to use it to either help the quarterback or go after the quarterback. Or no, he said go affect the quarterback. We're going to draft someone to affect the quarterback or help the quarterback. A non-answer. Basically, all the positions either help or affect the quarterback on defense. So, same mindset, not giving too much away, which is smart, I guess, but Ryan Poles really broke it down a bit more and how they're going to really diagnose this whole situation with the number 9 pick. And with that, the biggest theme, if you watch these episodes with me, is that I'm a sucker for trading back. Gathering more capital, having more options to draft and improve this team. The Bears have done that already without trading too much. But with the number 9 pick, if you're not going to trade the 1 because before you were supposed to keep Justin Fields or that was an idea, now you're going to get Caleb Williams. You're really dead set on him, it seems. With the 9 pick, you still have teams, sneaky teams that aren't really talked about too much right now, that want to move up draft boards and want to move up the pecking order and get players that they really like at that spot. Say nobody trades into the top 4 and gets J.J. McCarthy. You get Drake May, Jaden Daniels, Caleb Williams go top 3. Then you have the receivers, most likely go to the next 3 all the way to the Giants. The Tennessee Titans don't really need a quarterback. The Falcons definitely don't with the contract they gave to Kirk Cousins. Then you have the number 9 pick, and you have the Vikings sitting there, salivating right there, waiting to move up. The Raiders are also right there. The Broncos, not to mention as well. I'll get into them a little bit after the break. Those 3 teams are just waiting for that chance, anticipating nobody to take their guy and jump up draft boards. So that number 9 pick is still very valuable for those teams sitting in the 11th through, I would say, 16 range if some of those teams really want to move up. So it still holds value, and I would really look and entertain a lot of options to try and trade that pick, because the biggest thing for me that I didn't know and I found out about while I was doing these notes and the research for this is that the Bears only have 4 picks in the entire draft. They have 1, they have number 9. They don't have a second-round pick because they traded that to the Commanders for Montez Sweat, and you don't have a 4th-round pick for this year's draft because they traded it for Keenan Allen. So they have 1, 9, 75, and 122. That's it in this year's draft. They've accumulated more down the road, but with only 4 picks in this draft, you want to get the best bang for your buck with Caleb Williams and show everybody that this plan is working right away. And by doing so, I don't think 4 picks is going to do it to justify your whole plan, at least in the first year. I'm not saying they have to go, they have to get over 10 wins or something like that, but showing that Caleb Williams is progressing and is showing good promise and great potential, good connection with these receivers, I think adding more draft capital will give you a greater chance to do that. So my advice to them would be trading that pick to some of these teams that would love to move up for quarterbacks or maybe for other positions, offensive tackle, if that's something that people want to do, or other wide receivers as well, depending on how the draft board lines up. You don't really know. I think if I'm the Bears, I'm really listening to options at number 9. Ryan Poles said that it's still an option to trade as well. But, it all depends on the compensation that they get back for the pick. But, 4 picks in this draft isn't really a lot. And on that topic, to sort of wrap this up and kind of think long term with the Chicago Bears, Ryan Poles stressed at the owners' meeting, at the coaches' meeting, that if they only end up with the 4 picks and don't gain more draft capital, he urges and stressed the point that he wants the fans and people evaluating them on how this project is going to remember that they have a long-term vision for this. It's not do or die in this season just with Caleb Williams and the 4 draft picks they accumulate in this year's draft. They want to make sure everybody knows that, think long-term. This is going past this season, down 2-3 seasons, hopefully, if they're still around, right? In all honesty, but I believe they will be. I've grown more and more confident with what Ryan Poles has been doing, and I'm keeping that in mind, and he stressed, and I wanted to make sure I brought that up, that he stressed people just remember that, this is a long-term thing that they want to build and build on, not just after this draft, and maybe if they get fired, forget about it and throw it out. The Chicago Bears have done that enough, and he's the one trying to change that. He mentioned coming in, trying to break a cycle. I think he's taken the right steps to do that. It's just about convincing everybody else that to really buy into this and have trust in them, because it is hard. I do understand it is hard to trust something that really hasn't worked over and over again. But I think Ryan Poles has done the most so far out of any past upstairs members, organizational members that the Bears have had. I think he's been the most proactive, the most aggressive, and I like what he's doing. I have confidence in him for what it's worth for the Chicago Bears. I like what they're doing, and I'm excited to see what they produce out there on the field with Caleb Williams and everybody else they bring in this season. So that'll be it for that and that segment. Very interesting to talk about that number 9 pick because, like I mentioned, not a lot of people are talking about it and how much value it has in this year's draft. But I will leave that there. I'm going to go to the first break of the show, and on the other side of it, I'm going to talk more about the Broncos offseason this year because no one's really talking about it, what they do, what the next steps are, as well as J.J. McCarthy and his percentage of going to the Commanders, as well as Dak's contract situation. So all of that still to come on today's episode. You're watching the GSMC Chip Shot Football Podcast.